Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He, of course, is Ron Vitiello. He's the former acting ICE director. You probably remember him in that committee where the allegations were being made that the ICE somehow was the Nazis or the KKK or something else. Ron Vitiello. Ron, how are you? Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Joe. Thanks for inviting me on.
You're very welcome. A big deal coming up in 6 days. We're going to have a new president inaugurated, thank God. We're going to go back to a semblance of a border, to the south and to the north both. What do you think might happen between now and then? The cartels are looking to lose billions of dollars if they can't do their human trafficking, sex trafficking, drug trafficking. What's going to happen between now and then? Will we see a flood of people in the next 6 days, or will it stop now?
There may be some people who are convinced by smugglers that they need to get in before the 20th because the policies will change at the immediate border as it relates to releases at the border into the interior of the United States. So there may be some desperation plays by either smugglers or individuals. But if you look at the history of apprehensions and encounters at the southwest border, the last time Trump was elected was some of the lowest levels of activity on the southwest border when he left office. But even before he was the president, after he got elected in 2017 in November, the numbers went to almost nothing because people believed that he was going to take care of the border in a way that no one had before. And that ended up being true. It didn't start that way, but before he was the end of his first term, the border was in the best shape it had been in decades.
What can he do day one, Ron? Can he day one say stay in Mexico? Can he day one stop catch and release? Can he day one stop the CBP One app? What can he do day one?
Yeah, the CBP One app could be turned around effectively, right? They could use it in reverse to start tracking the people who have been encountered and let go into the United States. They can start tracking those people. You could end, as a matter of policy, catch and release. That requires detention resources, which the government has now. And I'm sure they're going to make a supplemental request to add to that resource. He can reallocate funding on day one to make sure that those resources are available. But by policy, the migrant protection protocols, by law, the safe third country, which is the agreement we had with Mexico, they could reinstate that. That would require Mexicans to agree to take people back. But, there's a lot of leverage that he's talked about in this whole tariff regime. And they certainly know, the people in Mexico certainly know that he's going to secure the border. They helped before. They were incentivized by President Trump in 1.0, his first term. They were incentivized to help us. They started to control their southern border in a way that they had never been done before. And they deployed on the northern border to stop these smugglers from amassing large groups. That's a huge impact to the border environment and was a great help to the front line. So those kinds of things could happen right away.
It's Ron Vitiello, former acting ICE director. Go to ronvitiello.com. Really appreciate the time and the access. You just said something I hadn't even thought about. The CBP One app literally registers people that are coming into the country and gives them this TPS, I believe, temporary protected status, when they come across the border. So Biden and the administration can say they're not here illegally when they really are. You can use that in reverse, and we can find all of them? Really?
Well, I mean, that's the nature of the information, right? People have to sign up and then they get accepted. And what that is under the Biden administration, has been an abuse of the parole system. Those people have been paroled in. So by that nature, the parole is a discretionary act by the executive branch. So it can be restricted, it can be rescinded, and the app has data in it about who people are, when they were born, where they're from, and presumably where they were going into the United States. It might not be a reliable future state, but it is it's a place to start.
Was TPS always the policy? Is that something that Biden did? Temporary protected status. This is what people from certain countries are getting. I think Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, maybe some other countries. But they're getting this ability to come here illegally, stay here, and be called temporarily legal until they have to re-up it. He just, like last week or the week before, re-upped it for a bunch of people. Is this something new that he put in place, or was that always there?
Temporary protected status goes at least back to the Clinton era.
Okay.
It's a matter of discretion that's given to the secretary. In this case, back in the day, it was the INS commissioner. But when it allows people for their deportations to be deferred because of conditions at home, it's usually abused by the Democratic side. It's just straight up, as a former career guy, I can tell you that it was abused. It's a sot to like the foreign nationals from usually during election time, that may be U.S. citizens by now. So it's usually, I get abused by Democratic side. And he just re-upped it, making it more difficult for the public conversation about who deserves temporary protected status. And it's, again, that all can be reversed by the executive because it's the executive that sort of grants these waivers.
And it was meant to do sort of the same thing as parole, right? It was meant to allow somebody temporary status here until things were better where they came from. And we're generally talking about people defecting from the Soviet Union, maybe people leaving communist Cuba. It wasn't meant to just be sort of a broad swath. Hey, Haiti, you're not having a good time at Haiti. Let's give it to you too. This is just we're just handing it out now like it's M&Ms or something. Was the intention of this ever to be what it is?
No, I think the first time I saw it as a career officer, agent in the Border Patrol, was when they had a terrible earthquake in El Salvador, right after the whole war time. When the war was ended, El Salvador was sort of getting back to normal. They had a terrible earthquake, and then they granted temporary protected status to nationals of El Salvador who were in the country illegally.
Right.
And so it's kind of like parole in the sense that if they're encountered by an immigration officer, they're still taken into custody. They're still put on the docket, but they're not removed immediately because of the situation in El Salvador. But yeah, it's something that is part of the system, but it also is rife to be abused in the wrong hands.
RonVitiello.com. Go to his website. Former acting ICE Director Ron Vitiello. As we're watching this come to fruition next Monday at noon, the freak out from the left, well, the feigned freak out is mass deportation, family separation. They pulled this garbage on Trump the first time with family separation, ripping the children from the arms of their mothers. And actually, the little girl that was on Time magazine literally was standing next to her mother. The leg in that picture is her mother's leg. She wasn't ripped away from anybody. But that's what they use. They try to play on our emotions and our heartstrings. When it comes to somebody breaking the law, you're a longtime law enforcement officer, you're going to be separated if you do something illegal. Why is that a concept that's so hard to understand? And do you think that they'll be successful this time as they were the first time, claiming family separation is bad, mass deportation is bad?
Yeah, this is the Democrats working the room, if you will, right? They've tried to make people believe that coming into the country illegally, and without being inspected, without being invited, is somehow not against the law, but it actually is.
Yes.
If you want to talk about bipartisan support, bipartisan immigration law that was signed decades ago says if you come into the country without being inspected, you come here illegally, you've broken a federal law and you are subject to the administrative procedures that allow you to be removed and deported. And so the left has tried to make people believe that it's not the law, but it actually is. And enforcing the law is not a bad thing. And in the case of Donald Trump, he was very enthusiastic about securing the border and making sure that our immigration system has integrity. One of the ways you keep that integrity is when people fail it, when they break the law, when they come here, we invite them and then they stay longer than they're supposed to, They get removed. And so mass deportations is the tagline, that's the headline. But what this really is targeted enforcement efforts designed to bring up the integrity of our immigration system. So people are here illegally. They break other laws in the jurisdictions in which they live. They should be turned over to ICE. And that happens in a lot of places in the United States now. We want it to happen more. And let's not forget, the last 4 years, we saw 11 million encounters by CBP at the front line. Wow. 85% of they have said have been released into the United States. And so there are upwards of 15 million people in the country illegally. That has to be corrected. The way you do that is you deport them and you put them on a path for removal.
It is Ron Vitiello, former acting ICE director. I'm guessing you speak to the people who work for ICE and Border Patrol. I'm guessing the morale has to be through the roof because it looked like many were going to go by attrition. They're going to retire, go get a different job. They weren't going to sign up. New people signing up. It wasn't happening. Are they emboldened again that they'll be able to do their job starting next Monday?
Yes, absolutely. Anybody that was in during Trump 1.0, anybody that listened to him on the campaign knows that the men and the women in the front line are going to have someone in the Oval Office that has their back and is going to give them the tools that they need to succeed. The Border Patrol agents, the ICE agents, the frontline people, they know how to do this job. They know how to protect us. They just need to be given an opportunity to do it. And they know that Trump is going to be that person that gives them that opportunity. And he's going to focus on it so much so he appointed a border czar, Tom Homan, who was a career federal law enforcement officer. His last job in government was as the acting ICE director like myself. And before that, he ran the deportation efforts inside of ICE for years. Yeah. And has decades of experience in federal law enforcement. So the front line, 100% morale boost with Trump coming back.
Ron, is the 500,000 number that we're hearing about missing children, is that a real number? 500,000 children came here and we don't have any idea where they are?
Yeah, but every child that comes to the border unaccompanied gets released into the United States. The government is supposed to track who they place them with and then make sure that they're maintaining, a safe and secure household. They're also supposed to be able to go to their immigration hearings. None of that happens under a Democratic administration. So yeah, a lot of kids came here and they were just released directly to sponsors in the United States. Some went through the system and then were released, but the government doesn't know where they are anymore. So that's a big problem. And we know that these kids, both in the pipeline and in the United States, are exploited in the worst ways possible.
Of course.
And so, having that as a target for immigration enforcement, making sure those kids are safe, is also going to be very important in the early days.
It's Ron Vitiello. We appreciate the time and the access. RonVitiello.com. Let me show you a story that my friend Allie Bradley posted a little while ago over on X. She's a great border reporter. You may or may not know Allie, but if you don't, go talk to her. Allie Bradley is from News Nation. The Kenneth Fire arson suspect is not only here illegally, but sources tell me that 33-year-old Juan Manuel Sierra was encountered and interacted with by California law enforcement at least 17 times in less than a decade, from robbery to vandalism to assault with a deadly weapon to threatening crime to an intent to terrorize. He was either arrested or picked up for previous warrants starting 11/22/2016 right up till 10/16/24, where he was brought in on a warrant while also being arrested for unlawful paraphernalia and violation of protective orders. Clearly, Ron, we're dealing with a sanctuary state in California. Clearly, they are giving protections to bad guys. 17 interactions in less than 10 years. The guy now he's alleged to have started one of these massive fires that we're seeing. Is there something ICE can do, the Border Patrol can do, DHS can do, maybe the president, the executive can do, that will force these cities and states and counties from being sanctuary places that enable people like this?
Well, it's my hope, and I think this is probably in the works, that the Justice Department is going to take on this issue. Federal law is supposed to be prime as it relates to, versus state and locals. And so a law in California that prohibits law enforcement from cooperating with ICE needs to be taken on by the Justice Department, that California needs to be sued, or they need to be sanctioned in some way for not following the law, because that guy should have been arrested. The first time he was encountered by the police, he should have been turned over to ICE for being in the country illegally and committing a crime in another jurisdiction. These sanctuary policies are destructive to the rule of law. They're destructive to health and safety of Americans. And the faster we get rid of them, the better off we're all going to be.
It is Ron Vitiello. We lost your lighting somehow, but I think I brightened it up a little bit, so it looks okay. You sound perfect, though. Laken Riley, this law, or the act, has now gone through the House. It's gone through the Senate. Do you think that Biden's going to sign this, or do you think that he's going to wait for Trump to sign this? Why is this even a question? If you come here and kill somebody, I mean, hello, you have to at some point face the music, or get rid of them before they have the opportunity to kill somebody. What do you think is going to happen with this?
Yeah, this is common sense. I think he's going to try to avoid it if he can. He doesn't want this on his legacy. He doesn't have the guts for it, frankly. But yeah, you're right. This is common sense. We should have laws in the United States that say if you're here illegally, you've not been invited by our own government, you get arrested for crimes in the jurisdiction in which you live. Crimes like in the case of Laken Riley and some of these other ladies that occur in immigrant neighborhoods, right, against other immigrants. So those people should be removed immediately. They should be turned over directly to ICE as soon as they're finished with their state cases. But in this case, the Congress has now put that down in black and white. The House signed it. I'm going to encourage the Democratic side and the senators to support it out of the Senate, and encourage the president to sign it. But I don't think he's got the guts for it, frankly.
I mean, that would actually be good for his legacy if he did it. I'm not really sure what the question is. When it comes to that case, we know that the now convicted killer and his companion came here illegally, were taken to New York on our dime, flew to Georgia on our dime. Ron, can all of that process stop now, where we hand them a bunch of free crap when they get here, thousands of dollars on a card, maybe a phone, some food, some shelter, a nice stay at a hotel in Manhattan, New York, a flight anywhere they want to go? Can we just cut all that off now?
Absolutely. And catch and release on day one. That could happen January 20th at 2:00. And then you've got to set up the resources for the detention, or make this agreement with Mexico for the migrant protection protocols, or another safe third country. Panama during this administration has been devastated by the traffic through the jungle there. People are dying, and the cartels kind of have their way with the pipeline inside of Panama. They leaned in on this during the Biden administration, and they asked for assistance to help control their own border. We didn't do it. The Biden administration didn't have the guts for that either. And so there are other countries out there that want to help us solve this problem. Some of them are in the hemisphere. It could be our neighbors in Mexico. But one way or the other, you can end releasing people all over the United States, especially these gang members from Venezuela. We have absolutely no reason for them to be in the United States doing what they do. They've become so prolific in just a couple of years. There are no records of arrest for this Tren de Aragua group out of Venezuela recorded in the front line since before 2023. So Think about that. They've only been here a couple of years, and yet we know all about them because of the destruction that they're causing in major cities all over the country.
They finally admitted in Denver or in Aurora that they did in fact take over these empty apartment buildings after the mayor said it didn't happen, after the governor said it wasn't happening. Of course it was happening. We see the mayhem that they're causing. We do need to clamp down on them. It is Ron Vitiello. Ron, one last question. We see this very sophisticated tunnel system that were being used by cartels. Many say it was for sex trafficking of women. Of course, drugs were running through that as well. How are we not aware that somebody's building a tunnel system into our country? I mean, I thought we had sophisticated technology. Shouldn't we have known?
Yeah, the front line has the best of the best, but that's a very hard problem to solve. When a tunnel is being built, when it's built, where it is. So the technology, it doesn't exist to be very precise with that. It's usually found through intelligence. But this is a big problem. And I want people to remember this when they start talking about how expensive the wall is and the walls don't work. You just need a ladder to defeat it. This is what they have to go through, the sophisticated tunnel underground, in order to ply their trade into the United States, because the front line would stop them if they saw them. A wall will stop them from just walking into the United States. And so there's a lot that needs to go on here. But yeah, this is something that the cartels can do frequently because they have no responsibility to anyone, right? They're the worst of the worst kind of criminals, and they report to no one but themselves. They chase the dollar in whatever form it takes. That could be trafficking in humans, that could be trafficking in drugs, and bringing this fentanyl into the United States. And so they have, it's a constant threat that you need to look at the border. That's what the front line does. Tunnels are a tough problem to solve. The technology just isn't there to make it as precise as you would like it to be. But it's the intelligence, it's the front line, it's the men and women who are out there that usually uncover these things.
It's Ron Vitiello. Go and check him out on the website, ronvitiello.com. Follow him everywhere as well. Ron, I only got about 10 seconds. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, do you think that you'll be involved in the incoming administration? I hope you will.
Yeah, I've raised my hand. I'm waiting to hear.
Great. Well, if you do hear, make sure you let us know, okay?
Very good. Thanks, Joe.
Appreciate the time. Happy New Year. It's Ron Vitiello. Go follow him everywhere. We're back after this in the Joe Pag Show. Stay right here.